All right, the August 23rd meeting of the Rockport School Committee is now in session. First item is for me to remind people that this meeting is being taped and broadcast live, so you can see it at a future date if you wish, but right now it's going out live as well. First item is the approval of minutes from June 7th. I assume we've all had a chance to review them. Are there any amendments, corrections? Kathy, you can't vote on these. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 7th as presented?
So moved.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Lovely. That would move us to public comment, and I think tonight we may actually have a public comment.
So we're just gonna have you guys come right up to the table, names, address, and then the floor is yours. Yep, you can sit, yeah, and there's a button right on that microphone, so when you're ready to go, we'll turn ours off, you turn yours on. And that's more for TV than it is for the room. And usually you have about 3 minutes, so we'll let you go.
Hi, my name is Stephen Hopkins. I live at 309 Sandy Bay Terrace in Rockport. This is my daughter.
My name is Savannah Hopkins.
And I am the parent of 3 children that go to Rockport Public Schools. And despite moving here just 4 years ago, we found it a wonderful community. On behalf of my daughter, I would like to talk tonight about the need for a GSA in the middle school and high school. We understand that these groups are student-led and organized, and we look forward to learning more about the guidelines that govern the Rockport Public School and extracurricular activities. However, GSA in the middle school and high school are potentially life-saving measures for LGBTQ plus youth. I provided an article, and I'll leave it here, from the Trevor Project, which discusses LGBTQ youth and mental health. I just want to cite a few of the studies. 52% of LGBTQ youth who were enrolled in middle school or high school in the U.S. reported being bullied in person or electronically in school. LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide as their peers. Only a third of LGBTQ youth experience parental acceptance at home. A third of them experience outright rejection, and a third of them choose to hide their sexuality or identity from their parents. Only 55% of LGBTQ youth report that their school is affirming. As a parent of a daughter who has come out as pansexual, these are hard facts to hear. We also know that she has friends who identify as both non-binary, trans, as well as different sexual orientations in school. We want to make sure that these students have a safe place in school to connect with other LGBTQ students and allies. The good news is that there's hope and students can thrive when they have supportive adults and students around them. One study showed that having at least one accepting adult can reduce the risk of suicide by 40%. Having trusted adults in school as well as supportive peers reduces anxiety and depression among those who do not have supportive families at home. And the presence of a GSA has been found to significantly reduce the risk for depression and increase well-being among LGBTQ youth and young adults. As parents, we're coming to the school board to discuss how important GSAs are for students, but also to help finding a teacher, school counselor, or administrator who'd be willing to act as an advisor. We had a hard time finding an advisor last year when we wanted to start a human rights club. We would like feedback about the best way to go about the process of finding an advisor as well. And we thank you for your partnership and for your time.
So, I as an LGBTQ youth think that me and just my fellow youth in general would have it would be better for us to have a GSA rather than not have a GSA, because while a lot of teachers are accepting, and I thank them for that, there are some times where our school environment might be a little more tolerant than accepting. So I don't know how we would go about finding a teacher and, getting their interest, but that is my piece. Thank you
So
for your time.
Can I ask Savannah? Thank you for coming in. This is really wonderful. Can you define what a GSA is for people who might be seeing this later or watching it now?
Sure. So, do I have to go back on?
We got you.
You're on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, it's always been GSA or Saga. GSA is in Gay Straight Alliance. I believe that the term is also Gender and Sexualities Alliance today. I think that's the more accepted
Yeah, that
term, but I
is.
do believe they generally say GSA.
Great. Thank you for defining that.
context.
So unfortunately, our hands are tied relative to the open meeting laws in terms of, not the subject in general, but if it's not a subject we're debating, on the listed agenda, the point of public comment is to inform our debate. So it means we can take input like this, but we'd have to discuss it at a future meeting because we'd have to actually put it on the agenda so the public has the ability to attend. So that's actually on our sheet, which is not a reprimand. It's just it's just pointing out that this has been great. We will come back and answer your questions at a future meeting, and we'll let you know so you can be a part of that discussion if that's what you'd like, or if you want us to respond in another way, that's fine too. But I just wanted you to know that regulation prevents us from hashing it out right now.
Right.
Because we want as much public involvement as possible. But thank you for bringing this up, and I think I love, Savannah, what you said about, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for making things better. So the existence of any sort of support group like that, is a plus. Okay, well, thank you for coming in tonight.
Can I
yeah,
read these
please.
with you?
Yep.
This is what I just said, but also an article from the Trevor Project.
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you for
guys
your
for
time.
coming in.
And how do we get it on the agenda? Once you discuss it.
We just put it on the agenda.
Okay,
Did we turn
okay,
the mic
so we know we'll put it on the agenda?
But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
We'll work with Mark to actually come back with it. You stated a couple of,
spoken to us before and explained that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we will,
Thank you, guys.
so we'll reach
Nice
out.
job, Savannah.
Yeah, that was important. Correspondence, I don't believe we have any correspondence in our folder.
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Righty, so then personnel.
So that we have quite a bit. So this is often the case every school year, a lot of moving parts and fluidity to staffing sometimes. The list that you have in your drive, I will go through it for everybody who's listening or watching. This is anything that happened after our June 7th meeting. So at the June 7th meeting, I gave a whole bunch of updates about new hires and some retirements. So this one has all happened since June 7th. So Jillian Twombly has resigned from her position as a world language teacher. Thank you to Jillian for her time in the district. Ann Brady has resigned from her position as a high school special education teacher. So thank you to Dr. Brady for her time in the district. Christopher Dowd has resigned from his position as a paraprofessional. Kyle Nelson resigned from his position as a paraprofessional. Thank you to both of those gentlemen for their time in the district. Peggy Lyman will be taking a one-year leave of absence from her position as an elementary school special education liaison. Tanya Brousseau is taking a one-year leave of absence from her position as team chair at the elementary school. Dr. Bridget O'Connell has been appointed to the position of team chair, vacating her current position of elementary school psychologist. That position is posted. We are actively engaging in the review of applicant process at this time. Casey Hornwater has been appointed to the position of crossing guard for the school year. Peter Sorkin was appointed to a one-year position of elementary school special education liaison. Josh Hunt joins us as a middle school science teacher. Logan LaRue appointed to the position of middle high school band director. Anna Scott appointed to the position of middle high school health teacher. Catherine McGrath Fritsch was appointed to the position of school cafeteria worker. Jordan Fears joins us as a paraprofessional. I'm going to say Genesia, but I'm not sure. Thank you, Janessa. I should have known. Christensen was appointed position of paraprofessional. Elizabeth Luster joins us as a paraprofessional. Jacqueline Connolly, paraprofessional. Darlene Story joins us as a paraprofessional. And Jennifer Gee joins us as a paraprofessional. Just so that everybody doesn't panic at that list when we talk about attrition, and I was passionate when I came here about talking about hiring and retaining high-quality staff. Many of these moves are professional decisions where people are taking positions either up or over. In the case of paraprofessionals, it has changed over the past 30 years, and a lot of times paraprofessionals are young, up-and-coming educators where that used to be either a retirement job or a working parent job. So now we're finding a lot of young college graduates with educator licenses or who are just shy from earning a license. They're coming into the rank and file, getting their feet wet in the school district. And so many of these have moved on to bigger and better teaching positions, quite honestly, from a paraprofessional position. In the case of some of the professionals, sometimes it's life experience that gets in the way when you take a leave of absence, and in other cases, it's a professional decision to try on a different set. So everybody here, employees in great standing, they serve the district well, and those who are staying and joining us, we're very excited about that. I'll talk more about the school psychologist and the team chair positional move as we get moving towards the work of the district later tonight.
So I think we'll hold those questions.
Yeah, if you don't, for that position, if you don't mind, yeah.
Okay, I don't believe we have a new student advisory rep,
So we don't. Principal Rose and I are actually looking forward to meeting with the student government probably within the first couple of weeks of school, and we're going to propose a couple different things. One, to make sure we expand the membership, quite honestly, of the student government to make sure it's as inclusive as possible and we get a lot of voices. That's our first charge. Principal Rose and I have talked about doing a few different things, principal leadership forums, superintendent forums with students, so that now that we're in our second year together, the two of us, we feel like we could do a lot of leadership work, particularly with high school students, and find ways to engage them in the school district a little more robustly than maybe we have in the past. And with that said, I'd like to almost see us build the bench from a student leadership standpoint, and maybe we can build a revolving opportunity so a different student works with us every term or every semester. I'm not sure what it'll look like yet. So when that becomes a little less fluid, I'll come back to you and let you know where we stand. Great.
although I suppose if that student were here right now, he or she might tell us that last night there was a very successful senior cruise, unbelievably, and I think there was a senior breakfast right after that.
Yeah.
So the year has started, even though the doors have not sprung open yet.
Yeah, the cruise was beautiful. I did not get to go on it last year. It was a little all over the place last summer, and this year it was great to just get up there. And I was just saying to Nicole that I think what's so unique is I didn't realize what a parent-student event it was, right, until I got on that boat and realized this is parents and seniors actually enjoying each other.
Yes.
Dancing and listening to music and karaokeing, believe it or not, on the open seas. So it was really a good time. So I applaud. We had teachers and administrators, quite honestly, who did not have to go, who always invest their time in going and giving up the last week or so of summer to be there for our families. So thank you to all the staff members. Thank you for a great group of parents who put it on. There was food and chips and pizza and drinks and some interesting karaoke, to say the least.
Yes.
That I did not participate in, but I
special
listened
night.
to.
It's always fun to see the parents who maybe haven't seen each other since kindergarten sort of surveying the damage that the intervening years have wrought. Okay, so subcommittee updates. Now I know we, unfortunately, Mark Lorenz isn't here. He's dropping his daughter off at college, and I know he had been working with you, Mark, and others to
Amy.
revamp, and Amy, sorry, oh my gosh, sorry. But I think there's an update on the policy.
Yep.
I do have an update, and in your folder, you have a summary of our work over the summer. For the benefit of folks who might be watching from home, I'll go through what we did. As you remember, at the end of last year, we were tasked with forming a subcommittee to review all of our policies. And When I think about it, I think this is actually really quite a lot of work. As you know, our policy manual has 12 sections, 281 policies, 26 exhibits, regulations, and other supporting documents. And as you know, we've contracted with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees to help us get this done. So as Michael said, Mark and I are the subcommittee, and as a subcommittee of the school committee, we follow open meeting policy, and you could look in on our meetings if you wanted to. We met once as a workshop and twice in open meeting this summer, and we'll continue to meet throughout the school year ahead of these meetings, hoping to update and get all this work done by the end of the year. So the process that we'll follow is to do this work section by section and to think about which policies really don't need any changes, which policies need to be changed a little bit to align with those model policies, whether we have some policies that really need to be changed, and then whether we might have some policies that we would just drop so that we would adopt the MASC policies in their entirety. And so what we're doing is we're reviewing what we have, we're looking at the model policies, trying to make sure that we match. As we finish each section, we'll bring the policies back to this committee section by section so that we can talk about them and answer questions. And then when we're ready, we'll ask you to vote to approve the changes to the policies in form. And section by section by section, we'll try to vote to approve them in form. And then at the end, we'll approve all of them one last time all together. That way we continue this year to work with our existing policies, and only when everything is done will we roll over to a new policy manual. So I'm trying to think what else we might say. You have a file in your Google Drive, and when you go into that shared file, you'll see section by section by section, every single policy. You'll see that policy with proposed changes or edits, and then you'll see that policy all cleaned up. And so, for instance, if you looked at policy AA, you'd see at the very top in blue and in red some notes to you, the reader, and as you read through, you'd see whether there are little changes, medium changes, big changes, or no changes. And then parallel to that, you'd see that same policy, AA, cleaned up. So after the proposed changes. So if you opened up section A, review, section A clean, and section A with changes. So let's start with section A with changes. That'll be magnificent. At the top, you see all of this text in blue, and those are notes to us, the readers. And they say things like E means exhibit, R means regulation. And then as you go down, you'll see this wonderful summary. So policy AA in bright red, policies match, no changes needed. Yay, that's an easy one. AC-R, there's a regulation. This is the regulation that accompanies above policy. Details needed for Title IX and 504 coordinators. So in some cases, it's easy. There's no change. In other cases, we might actually want to wait until the superintendent updates something or come back with more information. But this is what we're working on, and this is what your documents will look like. And I imagine that for every meeting, we'll have this on our agenda. And so we'll put the section for you to review in the shared folder ahead of time so that we can come in and talk policy by policy, answer any questions, and see what we can do to get the revisions approved. All right, what questions do you have?
I'm really excited about what the end product will be because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of tedious work, but it'll be so nice. I ran into, this will make sense to Nicole and Kathy, ran into Rick Drost, who asked me about this at the transfer station because he used to be the person who would take 5 or 10 at a rip and try and shore them up. So the fact that this is sort of a comprehensive review and sort of a baseline to start once it's completed, how we update, that's really encouraging, and I think will streamline a lot of the conflicting policies or repetitive policies at the very least.
Right, and I think part of the brilliance is that there's not only somebody who helps us from MASC, but once all of this is updated, MASC will host all of these policies and will let us know when something is coming down the pipeline that means we need to review and change. And so we have a better shot of keeping things updated. I know that you know that when you look at some of these policies, they date back to 2000.
Yeah.
So it's timely work.
So Alicia Mallon is our MASC rep. She's a veteran school committee member from Westford Public Schools, and she, I believe, is now starting her first term at Neshoba Technical High School, which is Westford and my hometown of Chelmsford and a couple other surrounding towns. And then she is now working under Dorothy Presser's guidance at MASC. And taking over some of the review for the organization. She is a wealth of knowledge, and in typical strong leader fashion, if she doesn't know an answer, she doesn't pretend to, and she tells us she'll get back to us with a good answer, and she has done that repeatedly, including giving me an update for tonight's school committee agenda back page, because she knew we were meeting tonight. So really sharp woman on the ball, ready to go. And I have to just say, you know, Amy and Mark are it is a heavy lift, but the meetings have been really robust. Like, we've had heated conversations, strong professional conversations about some. Others we've just celebrated the fact that we don't have to do anything, or that we can roll it over. But they've been really careful to really engage in the operational side of this. That's always, you know, a superintendent's trepidation is like, how am I going to be able to interpret this, or how is the district going to be able to interpret it? And they've been great about that. It's going to take some time because we found ourselves hoping to do 2 entire sections in one meeting, and I think we got half of one done. But the end result was totally worth it. So we're going to go slow to go fast, I guess. And the goal still is to hit April or May with all of this done. Worst case, you're doing a final vote in June. And then, as Amy said, it's literally just a full rollover and replace so that we're not stuck in transitional policies. So thank you to both members. It's been really engaging work so far.
And obviously, this will be available online for access by...
When it's finalized?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'll live on their servers, but the hyperlink will be on the school committee page
Excellent.
just like it is now. Yeah.
Great. And then one sort of housekeeping note, and I think this is probably intentional, but the folder that has those materials, we, meaning those not on the subcommittee, actually don't have access to it.
That's not intentional, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I will fix that.
It's okay.
That
I
might be the
understand that
superintendent.
You may not want too many
nope.
chefs in the kitchen there. But
Nope, you should actually have view only, so I will fix that in the morning.
All right, wonderful. All right, so we have, speaking of house cleaning, thank you, Amy. That's a lot of work, and thank you for diving in. We have a slight tweak to our school calendar, which requires approval.
So, I'm kind of mad at myself for just not catching this and clean up at the end of last school year, but we had a conversation as a leadership team about trying to align all of our early releases on Tuesdays, because the feedback we got from families through the entry plan survey was, if we can stay consistent, that would be helpful for family calendars, people with daycare, after school commitments, that kind of stuff. And we somehow missed one in January, even though a million of us had proofread that thing. So that's basically a housekeeping that we would just like you to approve the new calendar, which moves that half day in January from the Monday to the Tuesday. And if you don't know the inner workings of the district, that also allows us to leverage more time in meetings on professional developments, because that's the once a month staff meeting placeholder as well. So if we align that with our professional development days, we can keep teachers for almost an entire 45 minutes to an hour longer. So that's a huge win when we bring in consultants or we want to do heavy PD. And I have not actually experienced that in other districts, so that's a really nice alignment for us.
That's great. And this calendar, Mark, before we go on to discuss and approve it, if there is any discussion, Is this something that's a part of the large packet of materials that parents will get? Is there like an easy
So-
stick this on your fridge sort of format?
Right now, that's it. If they go to the website and grab it, they can print it. We have not sent it home this year. We've digitized almost everything. And we'll talk about accessibility and equity in a few minutes, I would
Okay.
suspect, around that. But right now, it is on, the version with the old January date's actually on our website right now
Okay.
for people to pull as a PDF. So if this gets approved tonight, Amanda will make that change.
I mean, the format is really comprehensive now. So that's good. Any questions about moving the half-day from January 30th to the from the 31st to the 30th? No? Do we have a motion to approve the academic calendar as presented by moving one half-day from Monday, January 31st to Tuesday, January 30th?
So moved.
Is that, yeah, wait, is that correct?
I hope so.
Monday would be the 29th.
Right.
I think that says the 31st.
Oh, it's correct on the
Thursday,
calendar.
but it's correct
Yeah,
on
it's
the
correct on the
calendar.
calendar. Thank you.
Okay, so calendar as presented, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's correct now. There it is. Sorry.
All right, unless we're time traveling, that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Summer update.
So there's a lot of information. I broke the rule of PowerPoint horribly, that's why you have it and you can read it more thoroughly. I will kind of skim through the highlights for you, but I really, really wanted the leadership team to capture the summer. I want people to understand how busy and how much work happens between the last day of school and the first day of school, and how hard our year-round employees are working, and to some extent how hard volunteers are working. And there's a massive level of philanthropy that has occurred over the summer that I think we need to recognize. So I promise I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but what you get here on the first slide is just a summary of everything that's been going on in the district. The first bullet is an important one, that we have created 2 stipended positions, coordinator of curriculum instruction and assessment, and a coordinator of professional development, social emotional learning, and equity. Jody Goodhue has been appointed to that coordinator of curriculum instruction and assessment, and Amy Rose picks up the coordinator of professional development, social emotional learning, and equity. This is my attempt to gap fill, because as a second-year superintendent in a district that's ready to move forward and not remain in entry mode, I am recognizing quickly that because there isn't a director of curriculum position or assistant superintendent or that second position that is in existence in most school districts, I needed assistance with capacity so that I can help lead that work. So I will lead shoulder to shoulder with these 2 leaders, but we have tasks, and you'll see them come out in our strategy for district improvement, and we have a lot of work to push through. So both leaders have met with me over the summer to really develop our goals and our desired outcomes for the school year under those 2 umbrellas. And then at our first meetings on Monday and Tuesday with faculty and staff, I'll do a nice overview of the 2 positions and how Amy and Jody will kind of dovetail with me to move teaching and learning forward this particular school year. And, you know, they're 1-year stipend positions, and this committee and I will have similar conversations as we did last year when it comes to budgeting, and the balance between being conservative from a budget standpoint and progressive as far as moving forward. And we'll see how this gap fill works for a school year. So that's actually a pretty substantial conversation, so if anybody wants to open that up for discussion, I'm okay with that. Good. So our professional development plan that Amy, Rose, and I have worked on all summer long, we still are staying with our 3 big rocks: developing an equity mindset, inclusive practices, and literacy for all. And then here you'll see this is not an inclusive list at all. This is just our starting list, believe it or not, of all the things we've already contracted or have already started. The biggest one is that Dr. Darnisa Amante Jackson from Harvard University and from her own company, Disruptive Equity Education Project, DEEP, we have contracted for an entire year of what's called a bookend professional development model. So she's kicking this off at the district level, our work on manifesting a sense of belonging within our school community. So she will kick that off in a keynote on Tuesday at our full day. Then she's contracted to do 6 to 8 trainings with the leadership team on how to lead this concept of connecting a sense of belonging to student growth and achievement, and all of the research that says all members of your learning community, adults and children, will perform better when they feel like they have a sense of belonging. And we just heard more beautifully than I could say from one of our own students tonight that there's a difference between being accepted and tolerated and really having a sense of belonging and a sense of community and a membership. And that's what we're striving for, that everybody feels included, it feels like they have a sense of belonging and they have a membership within our learning community and the community of Rockport, whether they're a student or a 70, 80-year-old adult. So that's deep work, no pun intended on the name of her company. So she will do the bookend, she'll kick us off with a keynote, she'll do 6 to 8 training sessions with the leadership team. She's doing once a month coaching sessions with Amy Rose and myself so we can lead the leadership team. And then she closes the year with a keynote on our last half day to kind of bring the whole thing together at the faculty level. So super, super excited. I've had the opportunity to see her at MASS. Most of our female administrators got to go to what's called the Women in Leadership program, and Darnisa was an unbelievable keynote at that event that many of our leaders here had attended. So they came back ready to go and ready for me to kind of sign up to move this work forward. So very excited about that. If you remember last year, Amy and John Parisi and I were engaged in the Northeastern Center work around addressing hate in schools that came out of the MIAA, and I presented a little bit of that to you last year. We have contracted with them to work with our high school, particularly to work in a high school leadership model. So they'll work with students and staff around this concept of addressing hate in schools, which dovetails into this sense of belonging work. We've contracted with Keys to Literacy to help us move to a more research-based reading program. You approved the adoption of Into-Reading for our new curriculum last year. That comes with professional development. And then we will continue with Universal Design for Learning, inclusive practices, and restorative practices. There's a lot of work here, but what you need to understand is it all kind of falls under one big umbrella for us. So I have conversations all the time with people about how much we're adding to our own plates, and this is really just pieces within that one plate that's going to move us forward. So we're excited about this work, and some of this work is going to take 2 or 3 years. The Keys to Literacy is going to take 3 years. The Into-Reading training could take 2 years. The UDL inclusive practices and restorative practices could take 2 to 3 years to really take deep root in the school district. And I would suspect we're never going to stop talking about a sense of belonging and positive culture within our schools. All of that work will dovetail to academic prowess, and it will turn into instructional practices. So those inclusive practices and restorative practices will dovetail into our instructional practices. And the work we're doing with Darnisa is going to train administrators on the look-fors. So when they go into classrooms, they'll be able to take a look at instructional practices and make sure that we're meeting the needs of kids in a differentiated way. So I'm really excited about that. This is not robust work that we were able to do in my first year. So this is a lot of work. Under curriculum instruction assessment, you want
can
to
I
pause
ask-
there?
Yeah, just
go.
I am so interested in the work that you're doing, and in many places, your school committee would come and listen to the keynote kickoff, partly because we are curious, and also because as a community, we all believe this. And so I wonder if that's a presentation where it's appropriate for your school committee to come and listen.
I just think you can have 3, correct?
right.
3 of you.
Right, right.
3 of you. Because we can't have a quorum unless I post it as a
Well, I
school
wouldn't
committee
be able
meeting.
to-
We,
You
it
can't come
can't be
anyway.
a workshop?
I could find out.
Well, I'll just float that idea
yeah,
out there.
yeah.
In places that aren't so attentive to open meeting laws and quorums, it would not be unusual to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
a full school committee sit and listen and get the benefit and support
I totally agree
administrators
with you.
and
Yeah,
teachers
I totally
and be
agree
on
with
the
you.
same page.
So with the chair's permission, let's find out what, if I can list it as a workshop. And you might want to just find out from everybody if only 2 or 3 people can attend, that it's a moot point anyway.
Right.
And if all 5 or 4 of you can attend and want to, then I'll figure out
I
if we can
guess
post
the-
it as a workshop.
The bigger question would be if we posted it as a workshop, then the public can attend as well, and I think we're already at capacity for the room. that this would be sensitive.
And I don't want it to turn into a public meeting, correct? Yeah.
Well, and that's not to say, I mean, it could be that not all 5 of
Right.
us have the ability to attend, so at least 3 of us
Yeah.
there, at least,
Yeah.
or,
I
sorry.
assume Mark would be having opening
Mark
at his
will-
school,
He will,
Right.
yeah.
so he wouldn't be able to either.
Yeah, we did talk about having school committee, observe some of this work in snippets all school year long.
Right.
And so maybe you and I can work out what that looks like on a rotational basis, and so that we're,
I think it's a powerful message to your staff, to your teachers, to students, and to the community when your school committee supports your work by showing up.
I would agree.
agreed, yeah, thank you.
And Mark, along those lines, because what I was thinking when you were presenting this is we often are presented with sort of the 100,000-foot overview of new initiatives, and as they start to be developed, that's really the moment where people can actually capture what the current state is and how we've changed it over the course of a year in a presentation. Oftentimes, when people come in to give us the year in review, we'll get a sentence fragment like restorative practices, we're all for it, it's great, but we don't really have any tangible sense of
Looks like.
what does it mean, but also how has it changed
Yep.
someone who would be entering that a year from now. So just a thought,
Mhm.
as you start to develop those, even if they're 2 or 3 year efforts, if there's sort of a real-time capturing of how we've transformed,
Yep.
that's really helpful for us, because we often get questions from the community that have to fabricate their own idea of what these phrases mean because they don't have any other input to compare it
I'd be
to.
happy to do that, some kind of progress updates throughout the school year, that's good. I'd be
And
happy
if,
to do that.
if you'll just indulge me, restorative practices, is that shorthand for restorative justice?
Not anymore. So restorative justice is sort of sometimes considered as a legal umbrella. Restorative practices are really that relationship of you and I, something broke between the teacher and the student, for example, and what steps we need to go through to make that amend so that we get the sense of belonging back, and then I'm ready to reengage in your classroom.
It's a process
It
that
is a
people are
process, yeah,
trained
yeah,
in?
they're
Thank
trained,
you.
yeah. So we had George in here, whose last name I just don't tell George, I just forgot his last name. We had George in here last year doing a lot of good work with us from the main restorative practice. And he did, I think, 3 or 4 workshops with our faculty last year, and we've already seen it happening in the schools, and our assistant principals are all ready to go. And when we talk about the handbook, you're gonna see all of our discipline and punitive language has been taken away and turned into restorative language. Yep.
Interesting.
So under the curriculum, instruction, and assessment, a lot of this is, a lot of it is cleanup business of curriculum, instruction, assessment. So we're going to finish the content area curriculum overviews that I presented to you as drafts in the spring. The technology department is finishing up the back end finishing touches on our new website design. They have also been tasked to address the town's website. Unfortunately, this pretty much at the same time. So clearly we have a capacity issue there, and they're doing their best work. Mike did get a head start on ours in the spring. So it looks like we're going to be in good shape. When he gives me sort of a timeline for the rollout, I'll come back to you at one of the next meetings. What we don't want to do is roll it out in pieces. We literally want to flip the switch and have the old version come to the new version. But we are excited so far about what I've seen on the back end. We are in the middle of creating that repository for curriculum mapping and documents so that there's systemic consistency, so a 4th grade teacher can see what happens in 3rd grade, can see what happens in 2nd. A high school teacher can go back when a kid says, I never learned that, and they can say, well, as a matter of fact, this has spiraled for 4 years. So we can have some good conversations about that. And when we talk about onboarding new staff, this is important so that staff don't feel like they're just coming in with no supports and resources. And we started our curriculum review cycle. It really started the year before I got here with the math implementation and the math program that you adopted, and now we've turned to literacy. Science is actually in relatively good shape right now. If you remember, right at the end of the year, we expanded the FOSS program to cover the entire elementary school. And it had been a pilot up until that time in a couple of grades. So really now we just have a discussion around what social studies will look like, and when the state finally rubber stamps the new health and wellness frameworks. It'll be a conversation really around social studies and history and health and wellness, I would suspect. And right here, you'll see that list of instructional practice work that we're going to be engaged in over the next year or two. You're going to see in the strategic plan, work around data collection and really getting back to that culture of data-informed instruction. This district had done a lot of work around that prior to COVID, is my understanding. And then a lot of that stuff for obvious reasons, just sort of paused. When kids are at home, it's tougher to do benchmark assessments. It's tougher to use data in a typically robust manner. But you know, we've sort of found ourselves on the other end of that, and with some sense of normalcy now. And so we had a lot of conversations in the spring with the leadership team and teachers, leaders about the need to bring that back, this data-informed instructional practices. And you'll see that in the sub-bullets on here as well.
One of the things we often saw during that period of data collection, review, and analysis pre-COVID, because we get a lot of presentations, the final piece of that was one I think that was lacking.
Yep.
And now, how are we implementing
Yep.
what we've analyzed into tangible
Yep.
results?
Yeah.
So that would be, I think, critical for us to have.
We have no lack of data in education.
Right.
The issue that we have all stumbled across for years in education is we're great at talking about the data. There's a great story about, you know, at some point you can measure the hill, you can circle the hill, you can talk about the hill, but eventually you have to climb the hill.
Right.
And so, like,
Pick a direction.
we need to climb the hill with this, and the faculty is there. The groundwork had been laid. So it's really just a bit, and that's why having that stipended position for curriculum instruction assessment is helpful. That's why having Bridget move into the role she's going to move into with a real heavy MTSS background is going to be super helpful as well at the elementary school. So I'll allude to that a little more.
Great,
Thank
that
you.
sounds good, because we have always been impressed by the amount of data and the amount of threshing of that data.
Yep.
But that last piece would be something that I think we could trumpet and
Yep.
engage parents with. Trumpet too.
This slide is unbelievable. Talk about a small team. Kirk has, 7 custodians and maybe one other, am I right, just one other gentleman that works with him on maintenance? And that is it. And there is a massive amount of work that was done. So, as you know, through capital improvement, the town very generously supported our capital improvement plan that included a whole bunch of this laundry list. Reflooring basically minimally half of the elementary school in year 1, the rest in year 2, kindergarten bathrooms getting all redone. Rugs torn out, floors replaced. The gym floor is beautiful. You remember we came back to you with an amended, if you have not seen that yet, find a way to sneak into the elementary school through my site. I'll bring you down. The gym is gorgeous, and June and I are very excited that we now have pickleball courts in that gym right down the hall from our office. So maybe we'll start a little school committee pickleball league if we need to. Really excited for that. With only 3, correct, only with 3 of you, sorry. At least you said it with a smile. Lots of painting, just to make sure we're taking care of our house, so to speak. We obtained estimates for that new preschool playground, and during a CPC meeting, they actually, unbelievably generous, agreed to go up again over the $50,000 or $52,000 number. Now we're just shy of $69,000. And Kurt is engaged with quotes, and we believe we have a viable quote. And looks like that work will be able to get started at some point during the school year. Super excited about moving that pretty antiquated preschool playground, and moving it, by the way, to the backhand right side, so that if you're a parent of a little older elementary school and younger kids, you don't have to decide which one you're going to watch anymore. You can actually stand in the middle of the 2 playgrounds and watch kids on both, or be with your preschooler and see your 3rd grader over on that one.
So it'll be like,
Yeah, on that back
Okay,
right
in the
side.
back right
Yeah,
side.
yeah. A little more aesthetically pleasing, quite honestly, too, than being stuck next to our storage containers. So that's a huge win. So thank you to Kirk and big thank you to CPC for stepping up there.
And this seems like a tremendous amount of activity at the elementary school. And it seems like we even got above and beyond where we thought we were going to get through the generosity of the Community Preservation Act. Is there anything that, I guess what I'm sort of feeling out here is that in the no good deed goes unpunished, is there something that isn't happening at the elementary school that people are concerned with? Because it seems like a lot of activity.
Right now, I feel like we're addressing everything that we can address appropriately. We even have a playground. We had a playground consultant come in who I believe had an affiliation with the original company that put together our
It's the
elementary.
same designer as the current playground that we have, and Kirk is talking to her and her associates.
About either broken pieces or some antiquated stuff on the current playground too.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, and how best to approach it in the most cost-effective way. And the DPW, I believe, is going to be helping out with that very generously with their time and effort as well.
I mean, it seems like short of replacing the entire school complex, I don't know how you could have asked Kirk to do more than he did in that 12-week period.
Yeah, it's a lot, and we've got some great subcontractors and some good people working. At the middle school, if you come in, if you know where the middle school office is, and you're coming in the office to the right, or I guess if you come down the main set of stairs before you get to the office, on the hard right, there was an old computer lab / learning center that has been totally reconstructed into 3 adult office spaces. That is where Anne Marie Luster will be for our 6 to 12 team chair. There's a really nice conference room because we were lacking an appropriate place for 504 special ed meetings. So that will be a 6 to 12 conference room ready to go. And then the third room next to it is going to be a smaller professional development center for adult meetings, teams to break out. Mike McEachern wants to do a Tuesday technology PD during common planning times. So Anne Marie's office, then a really nice appropriate conference room for meetings. And then the third one will be a little bit of a breakout room. So please get down there. It's a really cool space, and some good work went into that as well.
And that didn't, I'm sorry to keep harping this, I'm
It's
just
okay.
trying to wrap my head around
Yep.
it. It feels like that necessary reshaping of that space for those meetings, that didn't disrupt some other project in the
No.
elementary school.
No.
Because I think,
No, because that came out of budget, and right, June's holding me accountable. That came out of budget, and the other work came out of CPC, and some of the athletics we're going to talk about in a few minutes was all philanthropy.
Right. And
So
I-
we have a nice blend of town support, philanthropic support, and taxpayer support.
right. And I think the reason I'm asking is, it's such a rarity for us to actually improve the sort of physical areas
Mm-hmm.
that our educators have to collaborate and to plan and to meet, that I'm sure there are some out there who are saying, oh, this is all going towards the administration, when I don't know what that is, but.
Well, so
Or
it's-
that's the
yeah.
human tendency. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
going on.
So it's,
but-
well, so just for clear, it's not admin, right? That middle room is we
Right.
need a necessary, appropriate space to meet with parents and families around 504s and IEPs. Instead of running into a back classroom or a smaller room that doesn't have the technology and the work. The state is adopting a new IEP program, because they tend to just adopt new things. So we're doing a new IEP program, and that's gonna be pretty robust from a technological standpoint. And so Martha's office is doing a lot of training on that right now, and we'll be doing that all the fall. So it's a balanced blend between classroom upgrades that meet the needs of kids and adult spaces, and this all ties, and you're gonna get sick of the phrase, it all ties to this sense of belonging. That all of the research talks about, if you're happy going to work every day, you're a more productive employee, and that does not stop with teachers and with educators. So I said this is my 30th year, and I really have never gone to work thinking, oh my God, I just don't want, I've ran to school since kindergarten. Maybe I'm a rare kid, but I want staff members to want to come to school every day. I want students to want to come to school every day. And nobody wants to live in a house that's beat up or work in an environment that's beat up. And so we owe it to the taxpayers, because they're your buildings, to take care of the facilities within reason. Right, within the constraints that June holds me to. So there's a long list here. I won't read the whole thing because I know you have it. The only other big ones I want to really highlight, from a safety and security standpoint, when you come into the middle high school main lobby, you're actually going to see a vestibule that has been built and matched to the middle. And if you recall, we created the office clerk for the middle high school and took that from the teacher clerk to the office clerk. So Julia Quirk will be working in that vestibule. She'll be in charge of all student attendance. Monty, through the technology department, is purchasing a program called the Raptor program. So if you've gone to some of our local schools, Danvers, the Tech, it's basically a system where you come in to check in if you're a community member or parent or not a staff member or a kid, and you show your driver's license, it gets scanned, instant query, it gets stuck on you, then they call the office. So it's a really nice added measure of security. We're going to change all the patterns. Human beings, once the school day starts, other than faculty who have the badge keys, anybody else, students, parents, community members, can only come in the main lobby by that gym entrance. No more side door for the middle school, no more coming in on the other side of the parking lot. We're going to control the ebb and flow. We've worked with the police department on the needs around safety and security, and this is a big one. So that's a really nice addition. If you go into the lobby, you'll see that. And the last thing you'll see downstairs by the band room and the orchestra room was the old shop, woodwork shop, automotive shop, have been totally gutted, cleaned out, repainted. Floor has been resurfaced or touched. And then that is where all of our STEM programming, Project Lead the Way, and all of our new programs. So we'll really have a STEM suite of 2 different rooms, and you'll be able to see both of our teachers, middle school and high school, down there in a collaborative way, sharing that space. So really excited to have that kind of upgraded space dedicated to STEM and engineering. So a lot of action. A lot of action and a lot of changes. So please come in 3 or less at a time. And if you're looking for a tour, I'd be happy to get out of my office and walk you around. Either before the first day of school or once we get in. And just please come in and check it out. There's so much that's been going on. This is a tech list. I can't say it enough. I say it publicly every year. Monty is unbelievable. That the town partnership we have with the technology department is unbelievable. And this is just another example of all of the work that he's done to keep us a 21st century learning community, and to keep us upgraded. So as you take a look at this, you'll see the visitor management system is on there. TVs in the high school and elementary school office to get us better access to the camera systems in a much more transparent way. So they're not just on a small little desktop, but they'll be much easier for people to see and access from a safety security standpoint. Getting rid of all of our keys. And slowly but surely, everybody will have key card access only.
Nice.
So we won't have old keys floating around the district anymore, which happens in a lot of municipal situations. And then there's some general projects going on here as well. So again, that team is also not large. It's 4 or 5 people for the whole town.
Yes.
So for the whole town, and that's a lot of work. And then here you'll see some updates from each school regarding curriculum or building and grounds and staffing. The one that stands out to me on the elementary school is that this is the first time our school schedule was built in Aspen. So I don't know historically why that's the case, but really excited that it's finally there. So Amy and Jody have done a lot of lift there to get all of our schedules updated and technologically sound, and parents and students will have full access similar to the way they do in the rest of the school district. So kudos to both leaders. That's a nice upgrade for us. At the middle school, we talked a lot about this already, STEM, the new adult spaces. The 3 science rooms, if you recall, that came from capital improvement. All new appropriate lab tables and chairs. And provided things go well, the tables will be here and built, but we're still holding our breath.
They're en route.
They're en route, all right.
They're en route.
Which, in today's world, that's a good answer. So we're excited about that. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about the district-wide BCBA around that, but that focus is particularly on K-8 around the behavioral program, and really excited to have that happening. At the high school, our 2 staff members who are teaching the Project Lead the Way programs took a total of 160 hours over 8 weeks in professional development. Unbelievable amount of time that these 2 professionals put in the off season, so to speak, to get ready to administer this kind of learning opportunity to students. And enrollment in these classes, my understanding, is through the roof, which says a lot for us assessing the need and the desire of the district pretty well, I think. So we have no issue with filling those classrooms. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure we're going to be able to give everybody their first choice, which is not always a statement we say here. So really excited for that to roll out. The resources are here. The space is done. We've done some other building moves. The athletic director's office has moved from downstairs to upstairs. That room that used to be called the senior room is right in the middle of the lobby by the CAF. That is now going to be Mr. Parisi's office. For a lot of reasons, we're looking to get more eyes in that part of the school, so we have a couple adults with Julia at the entryway and John there. Secondary reason is we have some grant funding and some philanthropic stuff happening where they're helping, and we'll talk about that in a minute, they're helping purchase Friends of Rockport Athletics, Institution for Savings, Mike Nacella, and some other places, Awesome Rockport, and the Ed Foundation all coming together to support some athletic endeavors. And one of them is to give us more upgraded fitness equipment. And to really expand our fitness center down there. And if you've never been down there, it's a smallish fitness center with an old sort of gym teacher office, and that was John's athletic office. So we're moving him out, which allows us to give the footprint, a larger footprint for the fitness center. So excited to do that as well.
Will there be oversight in the fitness center?
Yeah,
Does that
there
happen?
is now, and there will continue to be, yeah. And we would like to find a way to make it more of an inclusive thing, before school, after school. I don't know, in case somebody's going to ask about community. I don't know what the community involvement will be in that. Like, some school districts get to the point where we have capacity where after certain hours, community members can take advantage of that. I'm not sure we're there yet, but we have actually talked about that partnership a little bit.
Right.
But right now, it's just a matter of getting students and staff acclimated to it and making sure we can cover it during the working hours and after-school athletic times. But excited for that, too. At the bottom of this page, I just want to say it out loud so people hear it if they actually watch this. Ed Foundation, $6,000 weight room updates. Awesome Rockport came through with a $1,000 grant. If you haven't looked at the soccer field yet, you're going to see the scoreboard move, beautiful dugout-style benches to keep our kids dry in the bad weather. Electrical upgrades out there. A cement pad is poured because we only had one small section of bleachers on the school side. There's going to a whole second set of bleachers coming in on that cement pad to expand the bleachers. So Institution for Savings came through with $5,000. Friends of Rockport, $15,000 to cover the bleachers, and Mike Nacella collectively has put together probably $40,000 worth of donations in time. Salary for employees, and the materials to build these player enclosures, and an announcer's booth. So when you go over there, you'll see the 2 benches, an announcer's booth with all the PA systems on the opposite side of the bleachers. Wow. It's unbelievable. And then we relocated they relocated the scoreboard to the middle so that you don't get that kink in your neck when you look to the score, and now you're just staring right at it. So I can't thank this organization enough. We have to do an official acceptance of the gifts, right? So we will do that at the next meeting. I'm waiting for a total. I'll put that slide together like we always do and just have you formally accept everything. But I wanted it out there tonight just so for people who are driving by the fields and taking a look at all this work. It's to your point, it's a massive amount of updates to the campus and to the facilities in a really short period of time.
And is that, are those upgrades being pumped out in our social media accounts?
They will. We didn't take like pictures. Well, Kirk has pictures in real time, so to speak.
Sure.
But
So-
ultimately, yeah, we want to have the principals kind of flooded out there, yeah.
And if anybody ever asked, would we all be able to say for sure that all of that money complied with Title IX so that
Yep.
boys and girls
Oh, yeah.
benefit
Oh, yeah.
in
Absolutely.
the same ways?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. Great question. So before I transition out of summer updates, that's a lot of information,
of
but
summer.
it was very therapeutic to put these slides together. So that is a lot of work in a short period of time, and I can't express my gratitude and my awe at the amount of people who have done this work. So it's a lot of work by a small group of people. And again, philanthropy, grants, taxpayer funded. It's been a nice mix in order to get this done.
It's great stuff.
It sounds like great stuff, and I wonder what the plan is for communication out to the outside world. Those sound like wonderful things. Just wondering.
Yeah. So.
I mean, beyond this meeting.
Yeah, so it's not going to be lost on me as we go through budget process number 2 together, correct? So we're going to really, really highlight the amount of forward motion we can make as a school district when a community comes together in a lot of ways, other than other than leveraging taxpayer appropriations. Yeah, so that has to minimally we have to make sure we're talking about it, and then I'll ask athletic directors and principals just to keep that message going out there as much as we can about how we've leveraged a lot of this in a positive way. All right, big transition now. This is not new to anybody, even Amy is caught up to speed on this at this point, right? So I'll skim through this. This is year 2 for me in the new superintendent's induction program. I have the pleasure and luxury of being partnered up with Dr. Christine McGrath again, the Director of Operations from MASS, and retired superintendent, special ed director, teacher, et cetera. And we have developed a fantastic relationship. She's been a great partner, thought partner for me, and I really, really, really have benefited greatly from this program. So, you pay for this, so to speak. This comes part of my professional development, and I just want you to know that the bang for the buck, in my opinion, is immeasurable. The process I went through last year was really scripted and very well supported, and that's how all of my work came to fruition in year 1 together. So that's just a kind of quick commercial for the fact that I'm in year 2. And then you have 2 documents in here, similar to last year, just with some changes. One is the superintendent goal setting and evaluation timeline. similar to last year with some change in the dates and some similar processes, just that we can hold ourselves accountable for. So the chair and I will make sure that we're going through these, and we always reserve the right to make some timeline modifications based on meeting schedules or whatever else might be going on in the district. And then the second one, I'd like to take a little time on. Those are my proposed goals. And so as you take a look, before you take a motion, as you take a look, goal one is really about developing and implementing the first year of the strategy for district improvement, which we're going to talk about a draft of tonight, and then I'll give you a foreshadowing of next steps that will help us finalize that document. And that'll really be our roadmap for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long it takes to complete some of this work that we work together on. So that first one is really around strategic development and implementation. The second goal, we read an article as a leadership team at our retreat this summer around developing strategies and effective strategic planning from a business perspective, not just an education perspective. And we talked about low value, high complexity, all the way up to high value, high complexity. And so we talked a lot about getting the most bang for our buck as a leadership team around implementing change and sustainability of that change. So really a lot of the research talks about identify the vital few things that should be focused on in your strategic plan and really do them well. So we're using the language high value, high complexity as a team to make sure that we're moving the district forward. And so that's the way I wrote this goal, and then I sort of just spelled out the major high complexity or high value components. One is to get through the negotiation of a 3-year contract with the RTA. The other one is to do a full review of the policy book with school committee. And then the third big one will really be to facilitate the transition to a 6 to 12-1 school model for Rockport Middle High School. And so there are lots of other moving parts, obviously, to leading the school district. But those are the 3 big ones that that I'm going to really wrap my head around from a planning and a SMART goal development standpoint. And then goal 3 and 4 are professional growth goals. The third one is very similar to last year, tied to the new superintendent induction program and getting through that program. And the fourth one, I don't think I'm biting off too much because it's to some extent work that I will continue to do. I just want the committee to know transparently that these are always goals of mine. I'm going into my fourth year on the MASS Professional Development Committee. I really enjoy being part of that and working with that team to plan our conference and to plan the extended professional development that is provided to superintendents and assistant superintendents, and it ties directly to my doctorate work in professional development. So that's been a great kind of secondary thing for me that I believe the district really benefits from, because it allows me to kind of prime the pump as an instructional leader. I will continue to attend at least 2 state or national conferences. I will continue and hopefully develop 1 more graduate, postgraduate course, and the same with conference presentations. So my hope is to continue to get out there as I continue to read and as I continue to teach. I believe it makes me a stronger learner, stronger leader, and I believe it positions me as a learner at the same time. So I believe that when I'm teaching teachers, when I'm teaching administrators, it really adds high value to the district and helps me kind of build the bench around our ability to move forward. So these are my proposed goals. If you have questions, comments, feedback on them, and then ultimately we just need a vote of approval.
So I think the first question is, did everyone have a chance to review these prior to the meeting? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one comment I might make is in the second goal, the renewal of a 3-year contract with the RTA. I think the public in particular focuses on what is the number, what is the percentage, but embedded within that negotiation is really the shape of the school for the next 3 years. And it's not just about the number. There are a number of avenues that the superintendent is going down. And I think that's a particular challenge for a superintendent in his, year plus tenure going into his second year. So I think a lot of the work you've done leading up to this will have demonstrated, hopefully, to the entire staff where you're coming from in terms of supporting a viable school district and giving it challenging goals that will help us keep that school district running efficiently. So I don't want to underestimate the difficulty of that goal
Thank
in
you.
your
Yep.
second year and the complexity of it, because it's not just about the number.
I would also speak to goal number 2, transitioning to a grade 6 through 12 one school model. And again, I look forward to hearing about your communication plan for that work, because I know Rockport has seen that model before, but not everybody may understand it. And I think people beyond our parent community are likely to be very interested to hear why this is the time to do that and how that makes us healthier, as opposed to whether that is something that we're doing because we're not healthy, right? So I think that communication piece is so valuable, and I look forward to hearing about the communication as much as about the plan.
Great.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Anything else? Or any other concerns or comments? Or do we feel comfortable taking a vote then? Looks like it. All right. So do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's goals as presented?
I'd like to move to approve those goals as presented.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you, Mark. Those are really solid.
Thank you. So this is going to be probably a good amount of information, but I'm really, really excited to present this particular piece. So if I talk fast, tell me, and I'll try to slow down. Occupational hazard for me. So in your drive, you have a couple things. You have the slide presentation, but you also have a PDF of a draft that is theoretically not public, but now that it's yours, it's public. So the reason I'll explain the reason it's a draft. There's parts of these that are rubber stamped from the leadership team already that we'll talk through tonight, and there's a back section of this that has to be iterative and completed. So you have the full draft in its entirety to date, and then what I'm going to do with the slides is kind of piecemeal it for you and pull apart the plan so you understand how we got to this point. So during my entire first year, we went through the entire entry planning process together. I won't relive that for all of us, but we know what we went through with the collection of data and the interviews and the surveys. And the leadership team and I led student forums and faculty meetings and professional development around this work, particularly in the spring around mission statements, vision statements, and core values. So all of that work has now culminated in this draft so far. And so the draft is chunked into sections with updated mission, updated vision, updated core values, a brand new theory of action, and then 3 big rocks, strategic objectives. And so I'm going to step us through all of that work because that's the work that's solidified. I can't say enough about the leadership team's work in this, kind of shoulder to shoulder leading through the spring. Then I pulled the data together, put together a draft. We had a meeting in July for, 3 or 4 hours. It was difficult to find a date that we could all show up, but we all showed up, and we did some really good work together in July. And then last week we had 2 really great days in 8-hour days of retreat, and where we did a lot of recalibration, team building and bonding, nuts and bolts, and then obviously some big picture strategy where we completed this version of the draft. So I want to step you through some of that, but a big thank you to the leadership team and to the whole community throughout the whole school year, because the voice of the community, internal and external stakeholders, is embedded throughout this document, and it will be embedded throughout the work that we do. So on the first slide here, I'll just go through, this is the updated mission and vision, and we will have some caveats or some kind of descriptors in parentheses throughout the document because we feel like it needs to be a teaching tool. One thing that really frustrates me in any organization is when you just put the posters on the wall and then it just becomes a 3-ring binder or something stagnant, whether you're in Panera or a hospital. Quite honestly, you're going to see mission or vision or values or some outcome-oriented statements. And what really the research tells us and what our authentic experience is, employees in lots of different venues says is, if the people understand this and subscribe to this and believe it, that's when the organization moves forward. So we're going to talk about the beginning of this work tonight, and then I'll try to front load with you like how we roll this out internally and externally to make it real, to make it come alive everywhere from a kindergarten classroom all the way up to a 12th grade classroom. And so the mission is really supposed to be kind of a what we do. Like minimally, we know what we do every day. And so we really honed down on the data that came in from the report of entry findings and from all of our work together, and simply came out with a very simple statement that this is the work we do. And then the second one, this vision, is really where we want to be. This is aspirational, potentially never fully attainable if you do this well. You're always striving to be better tomorrow than you are today. And so I just want to take a couple minutes to have you really absorb this. And if you have questions or thoughts about it, but the short version of this is these were longer, then they were shorter, then they had, we literally, similar to what we do in policy, we debated every word and we defined every word. And if somebody in the room didn't know what it meant, then we either rewrote it or we taught all 10 of ourselves what it meant, because we believe that when we left that room on Thursday, when we left that room, we now need to roll this out to the faculty and to the students, and ultimately to the community, and make sure we're telling one elevator pitch and one alignment. So I'll talk about what that rollout looks like, but at first blush, I just want any feedback on both of these.
I like that they're one sentence each. It's a long sentence, but
Already, that was a healthy discussion point.
I know. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a complex
Yeah.
mission and vision, but I think you've done the most you can to compress this into a digestible chunk that has meaning.
I will tell you that we even debated in the vision the order of the words in that last line
Yeah.
because of who Rockport is. And we felt it was super important to talk about creatives, because this is a community that really values creatives, and what that looks like.
And is this mission statement the one that you would be expected to be able to speak to when we're being periodically reevaluated?
Yeah,
for
so all of this
certification?
meets our NEASC needs too, because if you remember originally we were debating not having a mission statement and we were going to go just vision and be real visionary, and then as we went through the data and as Amy Rose and I talked about NEASC, we're like, they're just going to make us do it anyway. So there's no shame in that. Like, it's important to know what we do. This is
Right.
what we do, but I tend to lead in an aspirational way, and so our hope here is that we're always striving towards the vision.
And I think these look, having gone through, I think, the NEASC process
Yep.
twice while I've been here, these are certainly, they're smaller in scope. Well, I shouldn't put it that way. They're less complex than some of the statements that people couldn't recite to NEASC, I would imagine,
Right.
were. I mean, I like that it's been compressed without losing any of its sensibility.
I have two. One is a thought, which is the use of the word creative. That's an interesting word, and I must be behind the times.
Creatives, it's plural.
Creatives.
Creatives is actually an identification of people in that creative world. So
Yes.
artists, musicians,
That's a term
we actually identify
that we
as
use.
creatives, yeah.
My other question had a little bit to do with process. And I'm curious to know whether staff, beyond the working group this summer, have input.
Yeah, so in one of our last school committee meetings, I presented that whole rollout around the mission, the vision, and the core values, that I led faculty meetings, shoulder
you.
to shoulder with the principals. We did, a whole bunch of chart paper workshops, and I think if you recall, I put together a workshop where it was identify if you retired tomorrow, what you'd like students to say. Hopefully this is coming back a little bit to you. So I led a whole workshop at all three schools. And all of that stuff came together. So the voice of the faculty and the voice of the community. So we made sure we checked the surveys, we checked the notes from the interviews, I checked the notes from the student forums, and then we ultimately went to the faculty to work the mission, the vision, and the core values.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So as you look ahead, this is really, the other two are important, but this is the foundational system. This is the anchor or the roots, so to speak. We had 11 when we finished the workshops at the school levels, after pulling all the data together with the community and the internal stakeholders. We had 11 core values, and then we put them out there in a final Google form and really asked the faculty hard questions to pick their top one, then their top two, then their top, and we went through a really tough vetting process. And then good or bad, I opened up a bottom section that says, share your thoughts. And then people shared their thoughts. So we got the quick and dirty checklist, order of events, and then I got a lot of narrative from the faculty and staff around what they thought about them. What we were excited about as we went through this is some of us took literally an old school highlighter, went back to the 11 and went back to the notes and highlighted words in here. So for example, honesty was a word that came out all over the place, but when we defined integrity, we realized that's a key function of integrity. So we did a lot of research around other school districts and other non-school organizations and this concept of core values and what we believe. What I struggled with and then the team struggled with is a lot of places just give you the 5 or the 4 or the 10. We value high expectations, we value wellness, we value integrity. And if I asked 10 of you what that meant in the community, I get 10 different answers. So we felt that it was super important to have really clean descriptors under each of these that are research-based. So when you read the creativity and innovation, and you actually read research on creativity and innovation, you'll see inarguably through the research that a learning environment that promotes creativity, which is the ability to produce things, and we want to encourage innovation, was the execution. Not every creative is an innovator. Sometimes we have people that create and other people that take that work and innovate. But without creativity, there is actually no innovation. It's research-based fact in the world. And so we tied those two things together and in order. So you can explain to a kindergartner at age-appropriate language what this means to produce new ideas and then to turn them into something from an innovative standpoint. And we did that with sense of belonging. And words like foster inclusionary culture were super important. And inclusionary culture was one that was in the original draft. And then we tied that to the research around sense of belonging. Some faculty really hung on emotional safety and developing relationships. And as we read the literature around sense of belonging, all of that is what makes up a human being's sense of belonging. Same with integrity. If I ask people interchange honesty and integrity all the time. They are actually not the same thing. And so if you ask a bunch of people to define those words, people struggle sometimes. So we wanted to make sure we had district descriptors for each of these. And when we talk about wellness, we really heard from parents and faculty around social, emotional, and physical. And when you read typical school districts, they say we're going to take care of the social, emotional, and academic needs of kids. They lump those three together. We often don't use physical. But then as we dug into the research and the literature a little bit, that's an important component. So we want to make sure we're prioritizing social, emotional, and physical wellness because we know that if people feel good in those aspects of life, they're much more available for learning. And ultimately, high expectations is sort of a mix of things that we believe the district values based on all the feedback. So again, you might believe in high expectations and equate that to the word rigor. Someone else might say, no, it's about, I have high expectations for equitable opportunities. I think people should be personally and collectively responsible for their behaviors. All of those descriptors came out of the data sort that we did around this work, and so we believe our district has high expectations for academic growth and achievement, providing equitable opportunities, and all members of our community taking personal and collective responsibility for their actions. And that you can teach to a kindergartner, to a 12th grader, to a community member. And when you're doing restorative practice work, that work rings true pretty quickly. This was really stimulating work around these 5. And I think I will be kicking this off at the Tuesday meeting next week at the faculty staff level as part of my welcome back to the district to give the faculty and staff a commercial on thank you for everything you did with us and for us the first year of together, and here are the fruits of your labor. And then we're going to talk about how we roll this out and how we make it alive in classrooms. And it's not just about buying new posters and sticking them up on the walls in all the schools. We will do that, but it's not about that. That's not the outcome. The outcome is, as you said, you're going to look for updates. Do you have actionable, identifiable evidence that, you know, we are working on the sense of belonging in the schoolhouse, that we believe we're meeting the social, emotional, and physical wellness needs of our students and our faculty, quite honestly. So really, really proud of these 5. A lot of deep diving. Every single word was debated pretty heavily. So questions, comments, thoughts around this?
Do you think, I'll ask a question. Do you think embedded in here is some aspect of encouraging self-reflection? Because what I'm wondering about is there are individuals who feel like they've been doing their particular function for a long period of time, and there's no need to question anything about what they're doing. And certainly you could say, yes, I'm adhering to all of these, but I'm just wondering if embedded in there somewhere is also a questioning about, is this the most efficacious way of approaching this issue?
So the first statement is that we have to calibrate the district's understanding that these core values are for all members of the learning community. These are not core values just for children. These are, including the school committee, because you're part of the learning community. These are our core values as a learning community that we're going to subscribe to and we're going to foster and follow to some extent. How we identify them, let's take adult learners first, right? How we identify them in the adult community. We have high expectations that we see instructional practices and curricular designs that provide more equitable opportunities than you maybe did your first 3 or 4 or 5 years on the job. From an integrity standpoint, that you're really walking the talk, so to speak. From a creativity standpoint, you know, are we really seeing the execution of creativity? Are we seeing people take those lesson plans and refresh them and actually use data to inform instruction, differentiate the work the kids are doing, give students choice and voice at the middle school and high school level, particularly around being creative and innovative in a classroom? So I believe the hard work of the instructional leaders at the school level is going to be, how do we see this work come to fruition in classrooms every day, not just for our students, but for our adult members too. And that's kind of the drop the mic thing on Tuesday for me. Like, we're going to talk about this. Thank you to the community for helping us get this done. And then now we have to make them actionable. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I think it would be great, not only if our entire school community could adopt these core values, but really our entire community, right? Who wouldn't want to embrace that? And I think somebody in first grade can understand this, and I think grandma and grandpa can understand this as well. I think it's great. I think people can talk about this at dinner. They can talk about this in class. I think it's great. And you start right off with growth and achievement. There's no question, right, where you begin.
Which was an important piece.
Of course.
Remember the conversations around the data, around lack of understanding of rigor, right? So that, I want the community to understand that that's at the forefront. We are an academic institution meeting the needs of the whole child, and that's there.
Right.
The other thing to point out is the purposeful use of we. This is not semantics. This is not casually written, right? So Rockport Public Schools are committed. We debated are and is in that meeting, and if you replace Rockport Public Schools with we, it's we are committed. We did the same thing in the vision. We strive, not strives. It was, I'm not exaggerating, June was in the room. Every word was debated on these pages to make sure we had an inclusive message all the way through, which led us to 5 we statements that were and these are actually pretty simplistically written. We do believe that the language choice is carefully crafted, and they can be used as teachable moments for every community member that we have. So that's your front page. There's a theory of action, which is a if-then statement. So we spent a lot of time looking again at all the work that I just presented to you and trying to pull this together, and this is the shortest version of it. And we even used bullets so that it looked shorter. And at this point, it's there. It is a powerful piece, but in our opinion, the core values are really the foundational work. And this theory is our check and balance for the leadership team to make sure, look at if we continue to do these things, then we will have improved student growth and achievement outcomes that ensure that all of our students are challenged to be innovative thinkers who will positively impact community and the world. And we talk a lot in Rockport about getting off the island, so to speak. So that impacting our community is great. I feel like we do that well in Rockport, and we actually put a pretty high emphasis on our kids being involved. But we got to get off the island somehow, and make sure that they've expanded their knowledge and understanding of the rest of the state, the rest of New England, the rest of the country, and the rest of the world. They can come back and impact Rockport all they want, but we want to make sure that we're giving them as much of that world impact as possible. And then at the bottom of the page, and I'll take a breath, you'll see our big rocks. So this came right out of the report of entry findings, and these are the 3 overarching strategic objectives that we're going to lay out for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long it takes to feel like we need to refresh them. But traditionally, it's a while. You need to, just like professional development themes have to embed for a while, your big rocks have to embed. So we're talking about growth and achievement for all students, impactful professional practice, and comprehensive programming. And then on this next slide, and what you see on the draft pages, is that we drafted very carefully crafted priorities that will fall under each one of these, so that you have them up on the slide in front of you so that you don't get lost in the doc. We believe that priority 1.1 is so overarching and all inclusive that we didn't come up with a second priority. If we effectively integrate data and instruction to ensure that each student thrives, that is a massive priority, and you're going to see a draft for actionable work at the building level. So we didn't want to add a second one. That is a massive undertaking that could take years to really embed MTSS, differentiated instruction, levels of instructional support for students, and making sure we have identified the data sets that we actually care about and don't drown in them and use them appropriately. So it's really the marriage between data and instruction that makes great school districts thrive. And that's purposeful language there. So that's our first and only priority under the first big rock. We have 2 under impactful professional practice. The biggest one is the work I explained to you earlier. We believe we need to develop a systemic understanding of the key concepts related to diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity, and the skills intended to manifest belonging through instructional strategies. That statement, manifest belonging through instructional strategies, comes right out of Dr. Monte Jackson's work, and that's going to be the theme that she leads us through, that this is not something we do over here. So when we talk about a sense of belonging and we talk about DBIE work in the district, we don't polarize it and politicize it. We make it really clear that we're going to do this through instructional strategies to make sure all of our kids are growing and achieving and feel like they belong in the classroom. So that we don't have another generation of some kids that just say, nope, from second grade on, I hate math and I'm terrible at math. Just as an example. That maybe they can get a different message that, no, you just aren't there yet. Right. That would be a wonderful way to fix that gap that we have. The second one is to provide purposeful, high-quality, differentiated professional development. And notice this language was carefully crafted in identified academic areas to increase the knowledge and skills required to implement research and evidence. So the PD work that Amy and I will craft and lead with teacher leaders and with the other school leaders, we will identify the gaps collaboratively and then target it. And that's what you already saw earlier tonight, is we've targeted certain areas in the district that we believe we have to attack from a professional development standpoint. So those are the 2 priorities under impactful professional development. And then we talked a lot about comprehensive programming, keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, making sure we are a competitive school district, particularly at the high school level. And we have 2 major priorities here. One is to make sure we maximize particular resources related to time and space, and you heard some of that today, and you'll see really draft thoughts around time in the upcoming pages. And then the second one is we will continue to evaluate current programming to identify gaps and inform our development of structures and strategies. And that's what you saw last year when we looked at the STEM programming at the high school, for example, when we looked at a lack of research-based reading programming at the elementary school. And in less than a year, we were able to identify those and react to them. I can't promise that's all going to happen every year in 1 year, but that's pretty quick work right there. So those are our priorities, and I promise I'll open this up for questions. I just want you to see the end of this. So if you flip to the last pages, those of us who are used to school councils and the old school improvement plan, this is now the school improvement plan section of the document. It's going to be one district document, so we're not disjointed. So what's going to happen is you see some draft language in here that I just took screenshots of that's absolutely drafts. These were exemplars that I used in the learning sessions with the leadership team. So they might stay or they might get played with. But I wanted you to see the format. We did a lot of studies last spring around the difference between outcome-based evidence and output-based evidence. We're great at output in education. We make a great laundry list. Agendas, 7 staff meetings, 2 professional development sessions, common planning time, et cetera, but then we never talk about the outcome, and I think that was your point earlier, right? Like, it's great, you present the laundry list of the work, but so what? Right. And so the research that we read was the relationship between output-based evidence, here are the things we do, but here are the intentional outcomes that were the result. And so we're going to write those. So the work, what will happen is we're going to bring and I believe we're going to form a middle high school council. They'll be labeled as 2 separate school councils, but we're going to start that transition early because this is multi-year work. So sometime in September and October, the principals and I are going to lead one all-district school council meeting. I think I stole this from my mentor. So we're going to run one school district kickoff where I will run everybody through the strategy, talk about the roles and responsibilities of school councils, lay out the work for the school year, and then the 2 school councils will go off, once a month or however we do this on some kind of regular schedule. That is where they will, with the guidance of the principal, start to develop these pages in full. So the school council, under the direction with faculty and principals, will develop the output-based evidence, and they're going to write SMART goal outcome. That's how we're going to measure success, because we're going to come back to the SMART goals and the outcome, and we'll be able to report back to you on our strategy for district improvement and tie everything I presented tonight together. And we're writing these in what's called a SMARTY goal. So most of us are familiar with SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, time-dependent, and realistic. The I is for inclusionary, and the E is for equitable. So that's a new upgrade to the SMART goal concept. And so we're going to do our best to write SMARTY goals. These are some drafts that I put together with the help of a few of the leadership team members. And you'll see one there, for example, under effectively integrating data, we wrote that by June of 2024, the elementary school will have developed and begun to implement, here's the measurable, with at least 50% of the staff an MTSS design model to proactively identify and address the strengths of needs of all students by optimizing data-driven decision-making. So that's one. There might only be one, or the school council might come up with 2. Again, less is more. I think we should have a really lean and mean plan. And then I will do presentations along with all of our colleagues in the district throughout the school year for you, either quarterly or semestrally, however we get this done.
Can I ask a question?
You absolutely can.
So with not being, I've seen these before. I've seen the strategic, sort of the old way of doing it.
Yep.
So when you do the SMARTY goal,
Yep.
And it talks about optimizing data-driven decision-making, progress monitoring, when we sort of look back and say, have we met those, will there be sort of examples
Yep.
of that happening?
Yes.
Because those are kind of like
Yes.
very
Yes.
nice words, but
Yeah.
so like this is how we're,
Yeah.
50.
We trained up, we have 4 teachers at every grade. I'll give you an example, right? We have 4 teachers at every grade level. 2 of them have gone through this MTSS training. They have started to lead grade level conversations around data. We had 25 students in X grade identified, and 25 or 30% of them went from below benchmark to on benchmark as a result of that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yep. And again, my experience respectfully, is that kind of a goal, that's not a, wow, look at the growth in year one goal. That's like a 2 or 3 year.
Yeah.
So they wrote by June, well, the draft says by June of 2024,
aggressive.
right, that we're just training up half the people and we've started this work.
Right.
Then what happens is if we believe we met that, then the school council comes together next year and you write a by June of 2025 goal that is a little more aggressive and finishes off that particular area. Does that make sense?
And I guess I'm also asking, so like those of us, part of you're doing like the whole school council, and part of the principal leading it will be, so on the school council are educators, right? And
Yeah.
is the principal, but it's
Yeah.
also people like myself,
It has
who's
to be a
not,
50-50
who's not an educator, there are
Right.
parents there,
It has
so
to be.
they'll be talking about what does
Yes.
progress monitoring mean?
Yes.
What is
Yes.
social, what
Yep.
is,
Yep. And they might bring
All
someone
these
into that
things
meeting to
mean.
present about it, or like if the principal's not the MTSS person, they might bring in the MTSS person to talk to the school council. Yep, yep.
So, okay, this may be a loaded question. With all of these great Smarty goals, strategy for district improvement, does this in any way tie back to the evaluation of teachers or the negotiation of their contracts?
It ties to evaluation of all of us,
Okay.
including me, because my goals are tied to it, right? So yeah, so if we get together and they're writing team goals or professional goals, which they have to do, in year one, because this is not drafted in completion,
Right.
it's going to be difficult to have them fully married, but our principals, we've done this work all summer, so our principals have a pretty good idea of what some of these outcome bases will be when they meet with faculty. So just so that you all remember that they meet with faculty to develop and approve SMART goals as
Right.
part of the Massachusetts evaluation system. So when they do that, they're going to tie the faculty goals to the district goals. That's the through line. The through
Right.
line has to come from professional goals to district goals.
Right.
All from my goals all the way down.
Right.
If they don't align, then that's where you get systemic problems. So yeah, if the work is being done and certain people, whether it's me or anybody else, aren't meeting the goal, then that's made clear.
I only ask
Yeah.
that because
Yep.
we have visibility into whether you're meeting your goals as aligned with this through
Yep.
line,
Yep.
but then, our visibility ends. Which
Yeah. Fair. But
is,
but again,
is mandated.
yeah.
Not
It's-
supposed to be meddling,
Yep.
but
So if
just checking.
and so for example, and this is a tangible one, right? So,
Right.
if there's evidence by the end of this school year that the elementary school has systems and structures in place, and those principal and assistant principal present to you, or through me to you, however we do it, they're going to talk about here's our work this school year. We're really proud of this work. We've been able to move a certain amount of students forward, train up a certain amount of teachers, and this is how we've met this particular goal. At the district level, theoretically, that means at least a certain percentage of the adult professionals who were involved in that work must have been successful. Does that make sense?
that's,
So I want to make sure we get that the front page model and the back page model. The back page model is really the school improvement plan work, and we're just tying it together in one district document.
I had a couple of thoughts. Priority 1.1, effectively integrate data and instruction to ensure that each student thrives. By thrive, you must mean achieve and grow.
I do. That's purposeful language coming out of, again, I think Dr. Amante Jackson's work around thriving and striving and some of that other,
Yeah.
yes. So yes.
So we'd be able to explain that to
Yes.
community if
Yes.
somebody said,
Yeah.
well, I thought it would say that you'd raise third grade reading scores by blah, blah, blah. The other one I noticed that I thought was interesting was when you got to resources under comprehensive programming. So that we will maximize resources, time and space. What jumps out to me as missing is money.
So so we identified two that we know we need to attack, so to
Yes.
speak. And I believe we're positioned well to continue with a really good, transparent budget process. So that, again, this is not the end all be all in the document. There's a lot of work to moving a school district forward.
But that's great. You talked about the money and deliberately
Yes,
didn't need to
yeah,
put
and
it in.
I'll show you is
Thank
it in
you.
this draft? So on the right side of this slide, or under strategy 3, you'll see two pieces. You'll see that we're going to put together, you asked about the transparency around the schedule development, right? In the one school model, we're going to put together a new master schedule with a schedule development committee that is inclusive and representative. That ties to the time piece and schedule. The space, we've already started to attack, reallocating of space, moving classrooms around, moving the athletic director upstairs. That's the space move. The other big timely one is really to come back to this concept of our elementary school having a shorter day than other schools, either across the state or within our own district, which will be carefully discussed with the union, but that's an example of time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, this represents a lot of work, and this was informational for us, so there's
Yep.
nothing to prove.
There isn't. I just, I like the gratification a little bit. It's helpful.
Yeah.
And ultimately, in a best practice way, school committees normally, we don't always do it at every school committee, but school committees usually have to talk about what their goals are. And my recommendation is always that you support the goal of the district and you make the district goals your goals, because you could say, you could vote on, not tonight, but you could make a very simple motion at some point to say the school committee adopts the strategic plan goals as their goals for the 2023, and their goal is to support the work of the strategy for district
Right.
improvement, and support the goals of the superintendent.
Well, I think we should look at, we've often created a set of goals that addresses our basic functional role and then specific goals for the rest of the year, one of which could be, the easiest way
Could
to
be
approach
broad.
that is to adopt the
Yes.
strategy for district improvement, but I think that's something that we should take a look at before just wholesale saying,
Yep.
yeah, we're doing what they're doing. I think we have another, we definitely need to support it, but we also have other obligations that I think
Yes.
we need to formally address. But I appreciate the effort to move that
Yeah.
operation along as
Yep.
well,
Yep.
even though it's out of your hands.
So, big rollout basically at the staff meeting. I only have 40 minutes to do it, or half an hour to do it. So at that first kickoff on Tuesday, I'm giving the 10,000 foot overview to the whole faculty and staff, just so they can appreciate the amount of time and effort that they put in and what the end result is that the leadership team developed. Totally shifting. The reason you got this a little later than you probably should have is because it was vetted by two different attorneys. Because if we're going to do this, we need to do it well and do it once. And so I'll talk you through the process, then I'll put it up on the screen a little bit and answer any questions. But we undertook, my notes are on my phone, believe it or not, for this one, so I'm not checking my email. We undertook a really big initiative. I think I talked about this when I first got here, about taking our 3 handbooks and completing a full review and then reformatting them into one district handbook. The assistant principal team and our 6 to 12 team chair, Amanda King, Whitney Day, Jody Goodhue, and Anne Marie Luster, they did all of this work. Not to mention scheduling the schools and developing the strategy and getting the doors open, getting ready to open the doors for school next week. This was a massive add-on. So I can't thank those 4 enough. It's a heavy. I am a recovering assistant principal. It's a tough job because a lot of stuff trickles downhill, and then it just kind of stops at that desk. So I really do thank them. They've heard it from me already, but this was a super heavy lift. Michael Joyce and Patrick Nevins from one of our 2 firms, Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce, did a real heavy lift. My understanding from Michael, who usually does the work for us, is that Patrick did a big amount of this work. And we have developed this as a digital document with hyperlinks for ease of access and to allow us to finally be able to do timely and efficient review and editing. I promised the assistant principals that this should be the heaviest lift of this work that they're ever involved in this district, because now it's much more easily updatable. So I'll close out of the slide for a minute, and I'll put it, if I can find it, I'll put it up.
Can I just clarify
Yes,
so the 2 attorneys were needed to complete
a full review.
a full review.
Yep.
It's not that both attorneys completed a full review and thus
Correct.
it would be 2x the cost.
It was not. It was one firm, one fee.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I want to make sure that's super clear too, that this, basically, the version that you have is the one that our attorneys are saying go with. So most of the conversation maybe should be about clarity, but we shouldn't give ourselves, me included, permission to wordsmith or anything at this point, because it's really been vetted by the attorneys. So you'll see that what's going to happen is there'll be a hyperlink that goes out to families and parents. It's going to go out in a separate email, because sometimes things get buried in the principal's more, especially with all of the stuff they get inundated with. So it'll be a separate blast out to the families to talk about, here's this year's student and family handbook. And then you'll see on page 2, the only thing it's waiting for is a hyperlink out to what I just presented to you tonight. So we will clean that up probably tomorrow. And then everything in here is hyperlinked out to independent Google Docs purposefully. So it's not one giant running document that could become problematic in the future if we only have to make one update or two at a time. So most of this work is language cleanup based on updated MGL with citations. There was a lot of updated language that just we didn't catch year over year, similar to our policy updates, because a lot of school districts just change the date, change names, and roll that handbook over. And so this is a good opportunity for us to not do that. I'll click on this in a few minutes just to show you some examples, but the discipline language is fully changed. If you've had students in the district get in trouble, I don't know that that's anybody here, but if you did, it was very punitive language. There was like a grid in there. If you do this, you get that, and it is absolutely antiquated and not best practice and not tied to our restorative beliefs and systems. So that was a really big overhaul that the assistant principals put together. There was also a very strange end grade practice at the high school level, which is tied to seat time. Seat time kind of went out like in the 80s. So seat time is really not necessarily a valued practice anymore. So we had a hard conversation. The attorney gave us a very definitive no, take that out. So the high school leadership team has been working through what that looks like. They'll talk to the faculty about what that looks like, but that was basically the short version of that change. Was we were holding people accountable for not being in classes a certain amount of time, then they were getting punitively assessed, so to speak, and then all of a sudden you could get in a real bad situation if it's tied to social emotional or any kind of disability or anything else. So the restorative practices tell us you have to understand the why. Where was the student? Why were they not in the classroom? That kind of stuff. So all of that is non-existent anymore.
I can't see that. I don't seem to have access to the discipline and restorative, discipline philosophy and restorative practices.
I'll open it on the screen. I wonder if that one page, every page had to be set up to share with the community.
I'm
so
sure.
I will go back and ask her to do that, but I'll pull it for you right now, provided I can find it.
Maybe it's just me. Maybe everybody else can open that one.
To be fair, I'll have them check it, but thank you. Yeah, so as you go through them, and I'll have the tech check all the hyperlinks too. I thought we did this morning. So you'll see grades, you'll see homework. Here's discipline philosophy, so I'll open this for you. So you'll see a whole section here now that says our restorative approach to discipline is a whole school relational approach, restorative conversations, restorative circles, consequences that repair and restore. This is totally new language and practice compared to the way a lot of more antiquated practices took place. So you used to see, in old practices, you used to see, if you're late 3 times, you get 2 detentions. It was very black and white, and it wasn't open at all to like a humanistic understanding of the why. And that's what we've learned now from restorative practices, is we really have to understand the why before we can decide how to move the student forward. So that's the concept that's tied in here. It gives the student some voice, particularly at the upper grade levels, in how they will make amends and how they, this also does not limit us when it comes to high-end legality stuff. It doesn't, none of this trumps like bullying laws and harassment laws and stuff like that. That through MGL, that triggers particular consequences, so to speak. So this is an example of what that could look like, what that does look like. You'll also see hyperlinks out like to all of your policies. Those are now hyperlinked in here. There was a lot of redundancy in the handbook, so and it made us really nervous. So, there was so much cutting and pasting out of the school committee policies into a handbook, and then you all had updated a policy, for example, but it didn't get updated in the handbook. So now, because everything is live and up to date with the hyperlinks, it's all going to be embedded in here. This is a direction a lot of school districts have gone, and what you'll see is just one click box on the website that says Student Family Handbook, and it's just a click. It's a hot link, and they click on it, and that's what'll happen here. It'll bring up the front page, and then it'll bring the whole table of contents up.
Is there time set aside for faculty to see those real big shifts?
Yeah. So
as you start
So
school?
the principals, when they have that first September meeting, and at some schools they're just going to go out to grade level team meetings to talk about like where. So to be honest with you, some of it, like the restorative practice work, we just spent a whole year in PD on it. We were doing it, and it wasn't embedded in the handbook, right? So now we're actually catching up with ourselves to some extent. Same with homework policies. Same with dress code policies. And you'll see some of that coming out of MASC too.
You alluded to this earlier, access
Mhm.
families that
Yep.
can't click.
Yeah, so I'll be careful with my answer. We have a way of identifying who those families are. There are a few in Rockport. Everything, this is a non-judgmental statement, it's just fact, everything is done digitally today, right? You can't even enroll your child in public schools without going to a hyperlink anymore. You don't come in and pick up, elementary parents are not gonna get the backpack full of packets on day one. You're gonna get as little paper as possible to go green and to be more efficient. With that said, if somebody's not on our list, the principals have made it clear and will continue through their communications to say, if anybody in the community, parent or not, ever wants anything out of the school district in hard copy, and I think we did this with the budget books, just call the central office or call your child's school, and we will give you the copy. We'll either mail it to you, you can come pick it up. Yeah, but we do have a short list.
It's not it's not common, but
Nope,
I'm sure.
it could happen.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
So, Mark, I just had one question about, because I'm putting myself in the position of someone looking at this for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of these policies, what's the distinction about when you call out the school committee policy versus?
So because we should never use the word policy anywhere except when we talk about your policies. And this has been, I've been having to break this habit with myself included. We have procedures and practices.
Okay.
You have policies. So like in the handbook, and I'm hoping we've cleaned it all up and we will continue to stumble upon them, which is why it being live is so important. You shouldn't see, if you see homework policy, that takes you to the school committee's homework policy. If you see attendance practice and procedures, drop-off procedures, that's operational. So there's a differentiation between operational and school committee policy.
Gotcha.
That was really blurred in the old handbook.
So, for example, electronic devices, which there is a school committee policy, I think, on those, but there's a policy in here that doesn't make reference to that.
Yeah.
Is it maybe we have the acceptable use policy?
You have an acceptable use policy,
And
I
this
believe.
language is
Yeah.
referenced in a different.
Yeah, it is referenced, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you just saw, did you see the word policy right there? Or did that say?
I didn't.
Device
I guess
prep,
what
yeah.
I'm wondering, and maybe it's immaterial, is if you're coming to this outside of this forum and seeing some are school committee policies and some are not.
It was the same in the old book,
Right.
except it was spelled
Okay.
out without hyperlinks. It was a 75-page document. Your policies were embedded with the code number at the top. And then on the next page, there was a practice and a procedure. So it's actually no change, it's just that it's hyperlinked instead of paginated.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
And if I'm correct, some of these hyperlinks simply take us to pages on the website.
Correct. Correct.
It's not new information, it just directs us to the website for that
A
information.
lot of it is not new. The only stuff that's new is any place where the lawyer cleaned up MGL language where we were in trouble.
Right.
It is a shift. I fully get it. Like we get it as a team that the shift from like a scrollable 60-page book to a hyperlink doc is a shift. It seems to be the best practice and the commonplace out there in a lot of school districts. so that now we can go into each one of these separately and make quick clean edits, or share one only. Let's say there's a, I'll give you a real example. Let's say there's a Freedom of Information request. Just pull the doc. Right. You're not going to have to go through 75, 80 pages anymore. So there's a lot of like practical application to having it vetted out this way too.
And so I guess Amy's question tonight, so how will we communicate that there is a shift to an all-electronic
It's
lifestyle?
to the parents. It's going out in a separate email from each principal
Okay.
as part of their welcome back, and it's not going to be embedded in this more. It's going to be an independent email that goes out to say, you know, RES parents, here's a link to our digital handbook, and it's going to actually have directions on how to use it, and it's going to have directions on how to sign off on it, because remember, all parents have to sign that they've seen it. So that's now going to be it used to be that we were stuck in the 90s and we actually asked you to sign it and send the paper back.
Oh, yes.
And then the secretaries were chasing families down forever.
Yep.
Now it's just a Google form. You're going to go to a link, you're going to click it, and we're going to have a spreadsheet, and then they can just send out emails and phone calls to the parents that haven't clicked on it yet.
Great. And
I know, it's a long time coming.
And can I imagine that that's presented in a really positive way? Like the benefit of making this change is X,
I haven't
Y, and
written it,
Z?
but I will check
Yeah.
on it to make sure it is,
Because
yeah.
sometimes these come across
Yeah.
as just, it's changed and you're
Yeah.
gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah,
we-
I'll check.
Do we know if, when you're filling out the forms the forms for your child from year to year, will it be, I mean, you may not know this
You're
yet
asking for
because
the
it's
other
the first
forms?
year. Will it be saved so that you'll say, okay, this is your child, this is her birth date, this is
So
the
you're,
address?
so you're shifting to the
I'm shifting to the other
identification,
form,
yeah.
the identifying.
Yeah, so yeah, you and my wife should have a conversation, because she hates those forms too. So I can't answer that yet. I do know that it is the will of the tech department to digitize all of that.
Okay, so those will still go home, but the signatures for all
Correct.
these
Yeah,
different
yeah,
areas
yeah.
will be
We are
digitized.
aggressively hoping that that will not happen soon, but I can't guarantee that for the start of this.
Oh,
school
no,
year.
I was unclear as to which.
Right now,
forms
this is
were.
only the handbook.
This is the
going out
handbook
this way.
one, okay.
Yeah. I'm good if you are.
Okay, other questions, concerns? Do we feel comfortable in approving this format tonight? Yes, okay. Not seeing any disagreement with that. Do I have a motion to approve the 2023-24 Student Family Handbook as presented?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Thank you very much. So some real short updates here. I have held an introductory meeting, and all of the dates are blurring together, so it was sometime between the end of the school year and now, with our new co-presidents of the RTA, Stacy Twombly and Joanne Hildreth. So they are the co-presidents this year, and we had a conversation and a tentative plan to attempt to open, and the chair and I will discuss this further, obviously, attempt to open negotiations in October, if that's too aggressive, minimally prior to Thanksgiving. We'll talk about ground rules, doing that ahead of time, so we're not wasting time in a meeting doing that. And we'll talk about representation or no representation on both sides of the table. So all of those agreements, my hope is that all of that will be vetted and agreed upon prior to the first actual meeting. So that by the time we get to the first meeting, we've already established ground rules, we've already established the who's in the room, and it's just a matter of moving forward.
And that's been the case in the last several
Right.
negotiations, so
Yeah.
I would imagine all sides
I think so.
are expecting that
Yeah.
that will likely be the case.
That's what it felt like. So I think we should be in good shape with that, and we'll, hold honest and transparent negotiations and try to come to good, fair consensus. The second piece on this slide, just a heads up from last year, is the MASC MASS conference is coming up November 8th through 10th, and so I'm going to have to sign us up soon because that starts to fill up. So just, you don't have to do it tonight, but if you want to, Mr. Chair, get back to me with direction on, last year, I think the district paid for 2 seats each day, and you guys took turns coming down. We can do that. You always have the right to stay overnight. That's something else that school committees can do. So I'll let the chair kind of facilitate that and get back to me on how you want to manage that.
Circulate that. I think it was viewed to be really valuable for those who attended.
Yeah.
I think you
I was-
okay,
I
but
didn't
we
get to
almost
go,
had
yeah.
full attendance
Yeah.
down there, so.
Yeah.
No harm, no foul.
And the sessions are really good, and it looks very promising this year as well, so.
Good grief, a COVID update.
Well, only because, I know, it's a weird one.
All right.
I almost didn't put it on there, and then I knew it's gonna come back to haunt me if I don't, right? So, I did this, asynchronously with our two nurses, and so I just asked them to go through what we agreed upon last year, have them check MassGov and best practice to see if there's any changes. There are no changes, so all you see here is that I've kept the updated date, but then I've changed the review date at the top for tonight. And so all I'm asking for tonight is for you to just take a look at that and know that it's reviewed. There's no action to be taken. I would just, with your permission, I just want to make sure the header says reviewed by school committee. Just that way we're all on the same page. But there's honestly no change to practice at this time.
I think we're all in agreement on that. Okay.
This is a blank slide. June's going to give us a quick update on where we are, and then, Mr. Chair, you have a couple actions that we have to do every year.
Yes, and I think we still have, Nicole, we still had like a walk-on item about personnel. We had sort of pushed that to the end. Yes, no? Or,
I could do that. Yeah, actually, I can go back and do that now because that is tied to the strategic
Okay.
plan. So I don't mind doing that. So because it's personnel and HR, I'll sort of talk broadly, if that's okay. So we had a late notice of a request for leave of absence from a team chair, which is public, right? So we already went through that tonight. Our current school psychologist at the elementary school basically had voiced when that happened that she was very interested in pursuing that position in-house. Dr. O'Connell is a fantastic school psychologist, no doubt. She also has a really heavy interest in MTSS. She also has been a team chair in the past. And we have discussed some of our need for consistency in that department across schools and in our practices. And so Anne-Marie Luster moved into that position at the high school. That will really solidify, at the middle and high school, that will really solidify our programming there. We believe that Dr. O'Connell, in combination with Anne-Marie, will really pull us together with a two-team chair model. They actually already met today. Martha held a meeting with the two of them to really start to calibrate practices and understandings and everything from meeting invites to how we're engaging the special ed faculty and paraprofessionals. So it is, in my opinion, a fantastic win for us to really, really provide strong support to the special ed department. That position, the school psychologist position, and I think there was some confusion around this. When we built the behavior program, it's predicated on hiring a new BCBA, who we have in place. The BCBA oversees the program. Each school has a special ed teacher under that BCBA, and under that we have paraprofessionals. So that's sort of the triangle of support. The school psychologist really wasn't heavily day-to-day operationally based in that program at all.
And so there's no mental health involvement in that?
No,
So
that's not my statement. They're not in that triangle of
Okay.
day-to-day support. There's going to
But
be a ton of
there's
mental health. The school
other-
counselors, the school
okay.
psychologists will always be there for all students.
I think that was a concern of myself, but also others on my committee that.
So
there would be-
we are actively pursuing school psychologists. You know that we already hired one at the high school, middle school. We're really excited about that particular hire, and we believe through some of the contacts that we already have opened up that we can get a second school psychologist. And then Bridget is already serving as a mentor for our BCBA and for our middle high school psychologist, and she will pick up the third person to really tighten together our school psychologist team and the BCBA. So she's going to be heavily involved in the work, but the original model was not predicated on the school psychologist being a daily embedded professional in that program.
Mm-hmm.
It's the counseling team and the school psychologist will always be consults to that program as needed.
I guess we'd sort of talked about as it gets up and running.
Yeah.
She was sort of providing that mentoring to the BCBA, which
And-
it sounds like
and she
still
still
will
is.
be
She
doing.
still is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that
Yeah.
was sort of the discussion
Yeah.
is just clarifying sort of what that role is
Yeah.
and clarifying, because I think we talked about when we talked about mental health, maybe it wasn't clear, like who it was. But
Right.
now that you're sort of saying the counselors are going to be involved in some way in that, although they're not directly in the program,
Right.
they're not directly in that triangle.
Correct.
But there will be mental health
Yeah.
sort of supports around.
Yeah. Could be in the room, could be outside of the room.
Right.
It's going to probably be fluid and flexible.
Right.
One of the things that we continue to work on with our school psychologist is this concept of them being, it's a tough way to phrase it, but bogged down with the testing process and the meeting process. And in some districts, it's a really nice split where your school psychologist is able to do both that and direct services. That's kind of nirvana for me, to get to a place where we have that high-end professional who is doing the testing and the assessment work and synthesizing the data from that work, leading some meetings, training faculty up, and at the same time directly impacting kids. That's not often the case in some of the districts I've been involved in. They tend to just be test machines. And so the conversation I had with Bridget when she talked to us about being interested in this is her kind of helping us redefine the school psychologist's roles and responsibilities to the best of our ability in Rockport. So we would like to have them do more direct service, more support. I believe if we build a really good MTSS program, all players are going to be involved in that, right? If the referral comes out that it's a social emotional need, now you're going to identify who gets that direct support, who gets tiered instruction and tiered support in those areas. So in a perfect world, those two school psychologists will be directly providing students with more services than they have historically in the past.
That's a tough role because
That's a super tough role, I know.
if you have a school psychologist that is testing and providing direct services. I mean, I know this happens everywhere.
Well, not well.
Right. They get bogged down in the testing because
Yep.
the testing has
Yep.
to happen.
Yep.
And the direct service always suffers.
Yep.
So that's
So some
a delicate
districts
balance.
subcontract a 0.5 or a 0.4 to support the testing and not the direct service. I don't really have an opinion on that, but I know that that's a model that large districts often engage in. The other opportunity is, can you partner with Gloucester or somebody else around a contracted position that's not in the district, but that we share a contract on? So we're having lots of conversations like that now. It's really hard to do, and you're absolutely right. The timeliness and the legality of process always trumps that person's ability to meet with kids. I know.
I'm so sorry. MTSS,
Multi-tiered system of support,
BCBA, Board
certified behavior analyst.
Multi-tiered system of support. Thank you.
You would know it as RTI.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just changed the words in Massachusetts.
Great. Other questions or concerns? And then I think the other related matter was relative to the survey and the Board of Health.
Yeah. So do you want me to, we talked about that
Yeah, we
offline, but
talked
you
about
you want to talk about that a little? Do you want me to talk about it?
Yep, I think, well, I can speak to it, and then maybe
Yep.
if I'm saying it, missing something or saying it wrong. Mary Beth Murphy, who is our liaison, school committee liaison to the Board of Health, had asked about the results for the YRBS, which we'd done for the very first time in Rockport last year, 2 years ago. And because it was the very first time we had done it, we are still sort of, and it was a superintendent transition, on top of a lot of other things. It's sort of our first time working out how that presentation will happen and how, so the best practice is going to be, and I forgot, so we have our regional social worker, Jessie Palm, who came and spoke to the school committee, and she had in that meeting volunteered to sort of gather that data together, create a presentation. That presentation and best practice would first go to the administrative team, correct? And then there would be a presentation before the school committee, which the Board of Health, Mary Beth as the liaison, and the rest of the Board of Health could certainly attend and hear that. So Mark's going to be reaching out to Jessie to discuss that, and that will kind of be the flow of how that will happen.
Right.
And do you know, is the Board of Health a Zoom meeting or live now?
They are Zoom right now. Oh, wait, no, I take that back. They're live. They're live.
So, and that seems most efficient to have them join our meeting
Yes.
for the results of that survey and then.
Yeah, because this is the forum for us to communicate to the community, right? So my hope.
Right, no, that
yeah.
wasn't supposed to be a question.
Oh, okay.
Reflection. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay.
No, I made it sound like a
Yes.
question. but No.
I will reach back out to Mary Beth. So
I
we
think that's the way to go.
Thank you.
kind of the purpose of the liaison. Their next meeting is September 12th, so I'll reach back out to Mary Beth so that she has this information, unless she's watching right now. So that she has this information to take to the rest of the board on September 12th. So. Finally, June.
We're good.
June's
No more
Okay,
walk-ons.
False
for
start.
sure, okay. Good evening. It's pretty short. Right now, there's really nothing to report on because we're in 2 years at once. Town Hall is working very hard at getting all those summer pays that are part of last year's contract, getting them into last year on the books. After that's done, then I go through the whole general ledger and I over-under everything to get the final numbers where they belong. And then the town, it goes back to the town, they'll close the year, and then I start reporting on it to the state in September. So that's why I don't have any numbers or spreadsheets for you, because we're still living in last year very strongly, whilst also living in this year. I did want to just take a moment, and when we were thanking everyone, I think there's another group that doesn't get acknowledged, and that's our executive assistants, our payroll people, our administrative assistants. They're here year-round as well, and they're doing all this work that if they didn't, the doors wouldn't be opening this fall. And it's very busy for them. They're getting contracts, they're ordering supplies, they're enrolling students all the time. And so I think we should really, really appreciate them. And then also, this just happened today, the beautification committee came up and tackled that garden, that honor garden in front of the high school.
Wow.
And they came up and drive by. It is all cleared up. It's been mulched. It's gorgeous, and can't thank them enough. Kirk just made a call, and they jumped at the opportunity to do it. So thank you to all of them. The other stuff is just housekeeping. I need.
I'm sorry, can I ask you, is there a photo or something we can push out through social media to thank
Kirk
them?
takes pictures all the time of everything. Yeah,
That's
it's,
great,
You know,
but
yeah.
It'd be great to
Yes,
push them
yes.
out, because I
Oh,
think
most definitely.
it's so sweet to hear, these sort of
Just another group that,
community efforts that you don't really have any awareness of.
right, you would
Unless
just
you're
drive
sitting
by and just go, oh, that looks nice. But it's a group of people that are coming and taking their time and effort.
Yeah.
And then Kirk, again, with his extra time and effort, making sure the supplies are there to help them out. And so they can do that
We're in
work.
the dirt.
Yeah.
We're getting dirty for us.
Yeah, well, it's getting the mulch and everything for them as well, and they cleared it out, and it's a very nice space, once again, so,
Nice. When
yeah,
you first walk up, that's what you see. So that's
right. I do have housekeeping for all of you. Every year, we need a motion for a single signer on the warrants or any other documents. If we don't do this, all 5 of you must sign everything, every single time. That means you need to be available for everything: payroll, warrants, documents, contracts, everything. So I need a motion, I request of you a motion to assign Chairman Kelly as the single signer. And then if that is approved, then the second action would be a motion by the chair that if he's unavailable, that any one of you may sign in his absence. And that would be a tremendous help, and we do it every year, but it's just something that has to be revoted every year for your consideration.
Right, so do we have any discussion or concern about that? Is anyone dying to have June show up on their porch
With a blue pen.
with a blue pen?
it's okay.
It's fine. It's nice to see her.
Michael Kelly's front porch.
I move that we approve Chairman Kelly as the single signer for warrants.
Second. Yeah.
Go quick there.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Now, I'll request a motion to approve any of the school committee members to sign motion to approve any of the school committee members to serve as a single signer in the event that the chair of the committee is not available.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, there's a whole pile
Thank
to
you.
start with. Thanks, June. It's a
So,
learning moment.
other than final discussion, that is all we have on tonight's agenda. This was a long meeting by our standards recently, but this was a
It is, but
lot.
it's chock-full.
It was chock full. I really appreciate
Well, you guys were busy
the
this
time.
summer.
Yeah,
Very busy.
so and I'm excited about year two. I'm really excited to get moving. I can't wait to see kids in classes. Just can't wait to walk around and finally feel the buzz of the school
I'm
again.
sure they all feel the same.
They don't agree with me, but the seniors do because they're just going to
Seniors
check
do,
the days
yeah.
now. But
Already had their boat
Hoping for a
ride.
lot of snow days.
I know. One of them's already offered me cash. So
Mark, I realized during the strategy for district improvement, so there's this tremendous amount of effort, it's codified, it's presented to us, we start picking at it, but I'm concerned that we haven't been sufficiently grateful to the people who put that work in, and I don't know how we express that because they're not here and they're
Right.
likely not watching, and so it's just something, I guess, to think about. How do we celebrate efforts like this so that they feel like we care other than as critical?
Right, yeah.
And not just that, but also the parent and student handbook, the list of work that was accomplished over the summer. I mean, it's an enormous amount of work that's been going on. And yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, they've heard it from me for whatever that's worth. We talk about it a lot as a team that I get to sit here and celebrate, the successes and the work, but now it's a 10-person team with the addition of 2 assistant principals. That's not a big leadership team, quite honestly, but it's a hard-working group of people that they just dig in. Like it's just, hey, we need this done, and we kind of delegate out. And to June's point, the admin support that we get to do that work is invaluable. Like, so it's the 10 leaders, but then there's an entire team of admin behind us who make sure we show up to the right room and we remember to call somebody back, and that we proofread things, or that they're editing for us, or so it's a really good team of people we have here. Really proud of the team, proud of the work we've done, and that list was a busy summer. It's a really busy summer.
And do we ever, for things like the beautification committee or the $40,000 that were raised do we have a thank you that we send out?
So we were talking about that with a few of us about whether it's going to be formal thank you cards or some kind of blast out. Personally, I think we're probably going to do some kind of nice thank you cards and some kind of communication from the district. And maybe you and I can talk about how the school committee is part of that district thank you.
Yeah, because every now and then we used to have like a certificate with
Yeah.
an embossed seal, and would
Yeah.
raise a little fuss
Yeah.
because we're genuinely appreciative.
There are a couple who have actually told me specifically that they don't want it. They're just
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah.
And I've told a couple of them that I had to do this tonight. And even one particular person was like, that's not why we're doing it. I said, I understand that, but like, we need to say thank you.
But I think it's almost more important to raise a fuss over the people who say, I don't want a fuss, because at some level,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there is sort
That's
of
why I named them tonight.
appreciation. Yep.
Good. I did tell them all I was naming them, so.
I come from such a different setting. I'm used to seeing a school committee show up at the very first teacher meeting to greet teachers and to thank them for what they do. I understand we can't do that because the 5 of us can't be in the room.
So the chair is doing a welcome on your behalf.
Oh,
Yeah.
phew,
Yeah, so
good.
he has a-
Didn't know that.
And
That's great.
He has an entire agenda item to himself.
That's great. Thank you very much. I'm relieved.
Yeah,
Great.
that's
You do.
right. You'll never know.
He's got a block of time that he owns.
Right, you never know what he's gonna say. And what I'm gonna say is, the other 4 didn't want to be here, but I thought it was important.
Nice, nice.
Well, and I think at that meeting, we've had other school committee members there, just
Yeah.
not beyond that.
Well,
Well, because it's a
Three.
work day, a lot of times it's
Yeah, it's difficult.
not all five can be there, so.
And it was my understanding that the open meeting law was a bit, if you're not discussing, if you're not debating, you're not discussing, so I don't know.
I think
It's
that,
up to the chair to
yeah,
sort of
so
figure
I'll just
out.
tell you my experiences. The difference is that is a formal school day and that is a PD day for our staff. So that would not be like a typical event, like a parent open house. If all 5 of you happen to have middle school
Happen to be
parents,
there.
no big
We're
deal.
there
But
for a different
but
reason
yeah,
other
but
than-
for this reason, you will be perceived as a school committee member only, because otherwise, why would I open this up to the public? Right, so we do have to look out for that, yeah. But I have the agenda, I brought a hard copy for you.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you want to share this out with the team so they know what's going on, and if,
Yep.
you know, and you can see where Darnisa Amante Jackson is presenting, and so I'll send a digital version out too, to all of you. But this gives you the breakdown for the 2 days next week, and so as long as I know ahead of time who's coming, and as long as we stay 3 or under, it doesn't matter to me. I'd love to have people in there to
I
see the
think
work.
it has to be 2 or under, because 3 would be a
Three is
quorum.
3's a quorum, thank you.
No,
So-
I'm
You're
not
right,
trying
thank
to
you.
correct you.
No, I'm glad you did.
I realized as we kept saying
Yeah,
3, it's
yeah.
like,
Hey, wait a
I'm
minute.
thinking of 7, thank you.
We have a small quorum.
Yes, I will share this, and if there's a, you know, I don't know if if there's an interest in seeing the keynote address, is that something that,
Yeah, I have no issue with
Couple of
that.
members,
Yeah,
if that's
absolutely. She's
interesting.
super powerful, super powerful.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
all right, so are there any other walk-on items? No, any need for executive session?
Not tonight.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we stand adjourned.
Good night.